Susie?
It's not Susie, it's Astrid. I changed my name in protest of the deteriorating state of the rainforest.
Oh, what effect did that have?
Cheered me up, okay?
Before Inside Out ever existed, a bizarre Fox sitcom was already living inside a man's skull. Two future Simpsons legends shared screen time. A future superstar played a goth, and Leslie Nielsen appeared as God himself. One episode made broadcast history for an entirely unexpected reason. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Herman's Head. Fact 1. The title almost wasn't Herman's Head.
Wild is a good word. Gamey is another.
When the creators of Herman's Head, Andy Gourdat and Steve Kreinberg, first developed the show for Fox, it had a very different name. The original working title for the series was It's All in Your Head, which, while descriptive, did not exactly leap off a television guide page. The producers also went through another candidate title during development, Inside Herman's Head. That version was a little more specific, but still not quite right. Ultimately, both of those options were dropped in favor of the much simpler, more memorable title that audiences would come to know. The name change matters more than it might seem, because the title, Herman's Head, does something clever. It does not explain the concept to you. It just presents a person and a body part, and it makes you curious. It's all in your head practically gives away the premise before you even sit down to watch. Herman's Head, on the other hand, has a kind of odd personal quality that makes you want to find out what is actually going on inside it. The show itself followed Herman Brooks, a young research assistant working at a magazine publishing company in Manhattan, played by William Ragsdale, who many viewers might also recognize from the 1985 horror film Fright Night. While Herman lived his ordinary workplace life on the outside, the audience was given a peek at the four characters living inside his head: his intellect, his fear, his compassion, and his lust. They argued, debated, and competed for control of Herman's choices in every episode. It was a genuinely unusual concept for a network sitcom, and the title, Herman's Head, captured that strangeness perfectly without spelling it out for the viewer. Fact 2. Fox broadcast America's first nationwide condom ad here.
Can't. Once I finish up here, I have to go be interviewed. An interview? That's impressive. A high school classmate of mine is doing a Where Are They Now article.
On November 17, 1991, during a regular broadcast of Herman's Head, something happened on American television that had never happened before on a national network. Fox ran a paid commercial advertisement for condoms, making it the very first time a nationwide condom ad had aired on broadcast television in the United States. The episode that night was titled Near Death Wish, and most viewers probably had no idea they were witnessing a piece of television history playing out during the commercial break. The ad itself was only 15 seconds long and was for Trojan brand condoms, specifically the extra strength variety. In the spot, a young man who describes himself as a nice guy looks directly into the camera and says that terrible things are happening to nice people these days. A box of condoms then appears on screen as an announcer says, Trojan latex condoms, to reduce the risk. The language was deliberately vague, never spelling out exactly what it was referring to, but the context was clear. This was 1991, like in the middle of the HIV and AIDS crisis, and Fox had specifically decided to allow condom advertising only when the message was framed around disease prevention rather than birth control. Fox had actually announced the policy change just a few days earlier, on November 13th, before any manufacturer had even committed to buying airtime. Trojan moved quickly, and the result was that brief but historically significant 15-second spot airing during a quirky little sitcom about a man's inner thoughts. It is also worth noting that this was not the very first condom commercial ever shown on television anywhere. As far back as 1975, a condom ad had aired on local stations in California. But that broadcast was regional, not national. The Fox spot during Herman's Head was the first to reach the entire country at once. Fact 3. 2 Simpsons stars shared the same sitcom.
Let's put it this way. Nothing gets published around here without crossing my desk first.
That's incredible.
One of the more surprising coincidences in the history of Herman's Head is just how much of its cast would go on to become permanently associated with another Fox show, The Simpsons. 2 of the main cast members of Herman's Head were not just guest stars or minor players on The Simpsons. They were core voices of that show, and they were both working on Herman's Head at the same time. Yeardley Smith, who played Louise, the soft-spoken and put-upon secretary in the Herman's Head office, is best known as the voice of Lisa Simpson, a role she has held since The Simpsons debuted in 1989. Hank Azaria, who played Jay, Herman's best friend and a more successful writer with a somewhat self-centered attitude, is one of the most important voice actors in Simpsons history, and responsible for a wide range of characters including Moe, Chief Wiggum, Apu, and many others. What makes this especially interesting is the timing. The Simpsons had already been on the air for 2 seasons by the time Herman's Head launched in September of 1991, which means both Azaria and Smith were already doing Simpsons work while simultaneously starring in Herman's Head. Both shows aired on Fox, so in a strange way, the network had these 2 major Simpsons voices sharing screen time together every week on a completely separate program, and most people watching never connected the dots. The 2 shows even acknowledged each other in small ways over the years, creating a kind of informal cross-show relationship that fans have since appreciated more with the benefit of hindsight. At the time, it was simply 2 Fox shows sharing talent. Looking back, it feels like a remarkable overlap between a forgotten sitcom and one of the most successful animated series in television history. Fact 4. Hank Azaria openly regrets doing the show.
Yeah, I was fascinated. Like, do these guys always sound this way? Became the comedic premise, one of the first ones.
Not every cast member looks back fondly on their time with Herman's Head. Hank Azaria, who played Jay on the show, has been fairly open about the fact that it was not one of his favorite professional experiences. The admission came during a commentary track for The Simpsons, in one of those relaxed, candid conversations that actors sometimes have when they are talking about their own work in an informal setting. During the discussion, the topic of shows that actors would rather forget came up, and Azaria was matter-of-fact about where Herman's Head landed for him. And he essentially said that he always had one of those shows that he was not particularly proud of, and that Herman's Head was it. He stated plainly that he did not really love the show. That kind of honesty is somewhat unusual. Actors often speak carefully about past projects, especially ones where they worked alongside colleagues they respect, and Herman's Head did have genuinely talented people involved. But Azaria did not seem to feel the need to be diplomatic about it, at least not in that moment. What makes the admission a little more complicated is that Azaria's fellow Simpsons cast member Yeardley Smith was also a main cast member on Herman's Head, playing Louise the secretary. The 2 of them shared a workplace comedy together for 3 seasons. So when Azaria expressed his lukewarm feelings about the show, and he was not exactly talking about an isolated, forgotten side project. It was a show he shared with a close colleague and longtime co-star. Herman's Head also has at least one small legacy moment on The Simpsons itself, where the show is directly referenced in dialogue, suggesting that whatever Azaria privately felt, the show left a mark on the cultural conversation of early 90s Fox television. Fact 5. Jennifer Aniston played Herman's goth sister.
For us to bond, took us all to Las Vegas. It was really amazing, and we gambled, and just for the night, it was great.
Before Rachel Green, before the famous haircut, and long before she became one of the most recognizable actresses in the world, Jennifer Aniston showed up on Herman's Head in a guest role that could not have been more different from the character that made her a household name. Aniston appeared in an episode of the show playing Susie, Herman's goth sister, a far cry from the sunny, fashionable persona that would come to define her public image a couple of years later on Friends. The appearance happened in the early 1990s, when Aniston was still in the stage of her career, where she was taking guest roles on network television and working toward her big break. At that point, she had done some television work, including a stint on the short-lived sitcom Malloy, and was building up experience wherever she could find it. Herman's Head was one of those stepping stone appearances. What makes the casting so fun in retrospect is the contrast. Goth Susie, Herman's sibling with a darker aesthetic, is about as far as you can get from the breezy, likable Rachel that Aniston would embody starting in 1994 on Friends. So it is one of those guest appearances that seems almost designed to make fans do a double take when they stumble across it. Aniston was not the only future star to pass through Herman's Head in a guest capacity. The show had a knack for featuring performers who were on the cusp of bigger things, which is part of what makes going back and watching old episodes such a rewarding experience for television history enthusiasts. Aniston's appearance, though, remains one of the most surprising, simply because the character she played is so memorably at odds with her later image. Fact 6. The Simpsons referenced the show multiple times.
Well?
Hetty, look, I need a favor. I have a date tonight with an incredible woman. Would you please do this assignment for me?
Herman's Head and The Simpsons had an unusual relationship beyond just sharing cast members. The two shows actually acknowledged each other on screen, and with The Simpsons referencing Herman's Head in dialogue on at least 2 separate occasions, creating a kind of informal back and forth between the two programs that fans have since noticed and appreciated. The first reference comes in The Simpsons Season 4, episode Duffless, which aired in 1993 while Herman's Head was still on the air. In that episode, Lisa Simpson is asked what she is laughing at, and she replies that she just remembered a joke she saw on Herman's Head. Given that Yeardley Smith, who voiced Lisa, was also playing Louise on Herman's Head at the very same time, the line functions as a knowing wink. The writers were essentially having Lisa Simpson reference a show that her own voice actress was starring in every week. The second Simpsons reference came much later, in season 15, and in an episode titled Marge vs. Singles, Seniors, Childless Couples and Teens, and Gays, which aired in 2004. In that episode, Marge asks Comic Book Guy, voiced by Hank Azaria, to sign a petition. Comic Book Guy refuses, explaining that he only signs petitions in favor of bringing back television shows, and then declares that America needs the wisdom of Herman's Head now more than ever. Again, the connection to the cast is direct. Azaria voiced the character making the reference, and Azaria had himself been a regular on Herman's Head a decade earlier. Herman's Head also returned the favor in its own way, with an episode featuring Louise asking Herman whether she sounds like that Lisa Simpson character, a line that only works as a joke because of Yeardley Smith's dual roles. Fact 7. Leslie Nielsen played God inside Herman's Head.
The thing is that we know that we're being funny, but you can't let the audience know for 1 second that you're trying to be funny, not for 1 second.
One of the most memorable guest appearances in the entire run of Herman's Head was also one of its most conceptually absurd, which is saying quite a lot for a show that was already built around the idea of watching a man's emotions argue inside his skull. In one episode, God himself showed up inside Herman's Head, and God was played by Leslie Nielsen. The episode in question involved Herman pursuing a romantic connection with a married woman, which naturally brought the question of moral guidance into the mix. God arrived as a guest in Herman's mental space, and the comedy played out from the moment his identity was questioned. The character known as Genius, one of the 4 emotion-style figures living in Herman's Head, I protested that this visitor was not actually God, but was in fact Leslie Nielsen. And God's response was that everyone has their own personal idea of what God looks like, and that Herman had simply chosen to envision him as Leslie Nielsen. It is a clever piece of writing because it both acknowledges the joke and excuses it at the same time. The show is not claiming that God is a bumbling comedic actor. It is saying that inside Herman's particular brain, God simply happens to look like one. By the time this episode aired, Nielsen was well established as a comedic performer thanks to films like Airplane and the Naked Gun series, so casting him as a divine authority figure carried an automatic layer of absurdity. The casting also fit the general spirit of Herman's Head, which was always willing to take its surreal internal world premise to genuinely strange places without apologizing for it. Fact 8. Bobcat Goldthwait played Jealousy and got grenaded.
It's a little nervous, me being a father, because I'm not going to age gracefully.
The regular cast of characters living inside Herman's head consisted of 4 personalities: his intellect, his fear, his compassion, and his lust. But in one episode, a 5th visitor showed up uninvited, and the show handled the intrusion in a way that was both completely in keeping with the series and completely insane. The emotion of jealousy arrived inside Herman's head, and jealousy was played by Bobcat Goldthwait. Goldthwait, known for his distinctive and chaotic comedic persona, was a fitting choice for the role. Jealousy in the episode was disruptive, irrational, and impossible to reason with, which aligned well with both the character concept and with the energy Goldthwait naturally brought to his performances. The existing 4 head characters, understandably, did not take well to this new arrival. The resolution to Jealousy's unwelcome visit was as blunt as it was funny. The 4 regular emotions did not try to talk Jealousy down or reason with him. They simply threw him out the door and, for good measure, followed him with a hand grenade. The implication being that jealousy was not just unwanted, but needed to be definitively removed from Herman's psychological landscape. It is the kind of moment that sums up what made Herman's Head a stranger and more interesting show than its premise might initially suggest. On the basic setup of emotions living inside a person's head could easily have produced a pretty safe and gentle, family-friendly sitcom. Instead, the writers regularly took it somewhere weirder. Bobcat Goldthwait's jealousy character only appeared in that one episode, which makes the grenade send-off feel even more appropriate. He arrived, caused chaos, and was explosively dealt with. The show moved on. Fact 9. Inside Out reignited the show's legacy decades later.
And I really don't want to hurt Jay. Look, Connie, I don't think an affair is really the best idea.
When Pixar's Inside Out was released in 2015, the basic concept was immediately familiar to anyone who had watched Herman's Head during its run in the early 1990s. Both stories are built around the same central idea. Emotions or personality traits are literal characters living inside a person's mind, on interacting with each other and driving that person's behavior in the outside world. The similarity was obvious enough that the internet promptly started asking whether Pixar had borrowed the concept from the old Fox sitcom. The question reached Pete Docter, who directed Inside Out and had been developing the story for years. His answer was both genuine and a little amusing. Docter said that it took about 3 years into the development of Inside Out before anyone mentioned Herman's Head to him, and when it came up, his response was to ask what it was. He was aware of the show's existence by the time the film came out, but he was clear that it had played no role in inspiring the project. That answer satisfied some people and not others. But it is worth noting that the concept of personified inner emotions is not exclusive to either Herman's Head or Inside Out. It is a well-established storytelling device that appears in literature, theater, and other visual media going back much further than either production. The 2 works arrived at a similar idea independently from very different directions and for very different audiences. What the Inside Out release actually did for Herman's Head was give the forgotten sitcom a new audience. People who had never heard of it started looking it up, and many of them were genuinely surprised to find a live-action Fox comedy from 1991 that had beaten Pixar to the concept by more than 2 decades. Fact 10. a sketch show killed the emotions as a parody.
Mr. Bracken.
I need that work. Are you finished with it?
What do we do?
The four characters living inside Herman's head, his intellect, his fear, his compassion, and his lust were popular enough during the show's run that another television program decided to parody them in an exceptionally dark way. In 1992, while Herman's Head was still on the air, the sketch comedy series The Edge, which also aired on Fox, produced a segment that took the internal character concept and pushed it somewhere Herman's Head itself would never have gone. In the parody, a fifth character invades Herman's head. This intruder is not a new emotion or personality trait, but a full psychopathic disorder, and the disorder is played by Paul Feig, who would go on to become a successful film director and producer decades later. The psychopathic disorder enters Herman's mental space and proceeds to murder the other four personality characters one by one. Back in the real world, the consequence of this is that Herman becomes a mass murderer. It is a genuinely extreme place to take a comedy parody, but it also reflects something interesting about how the show was being received at the time. The Edge chose to parody Herman's Head because it was recognizable enough that audiences would understand the reference and find the escalation funny. You do not parody a concept that no one knows. The fact that a competing Fox sketch show thought Herman's Head was worth lampooning is its own small tribute to how much of a cultural presence the show had during those early seasons. Paul Feig's role in the parody is also a fun piece of trivia given his later career. He is now best known for directing films like Bridesmaids, The Heat, and the 2016 Ghostbusters, and making his early television appearance as a comedic psychopathic disorder, something of a footnote in a much larger story. Fact 11. Hetty's actress went straight to playing Ross's lesbian ex-wife.
And then, and they botched it, so then they said, well, would you play the lesbian?
Jane Sibbett played Hetty on Herman's Head, and the character was memorable. Hetty was Herman's co-worker at the publishing company, a socially ambitious and somewhat haughty woman who was often more focused on climbing the professional ladder than on being kind to the people around her. Sibbett played the role across the full run of the show, from 1991 until it ended in 1994. What happened next in Sibbett's career is one of the more striking direct transitions in television history, at least in terms of contrast. She went almost immediately from playing Hetty on Herman's Head to playing Carol Willick on Friends. Carol is the ex-wife of Ross Geller, who at the start of Friends has recently left Ross and come out as a lesbian. She and her partner Susan appear regularly throughout the series as co-parents to Ross's son Ben, and the relationship between the three of them is a recurring source of both comedy and genuine emotional moments. Sibbett held the role of Carol from the very beginning of Friends in 1994 and continued in it until close to the end of the series run, making her one of the more consistent recurring performers on one of the most watched sitcoms of the 1990s. What makes the Herman's Head connection even more interesting is that there is an episode of that show featuring Hetty attempting to seduce Herman's lesbian ex-girlfriend, which adds a strange kind of thematic parallel to Sibbett's career arc across the two shows, even if it is almost certainly a coincidence. It is the kind of detail that makes you realize just how much was quietly happening in the background of a show people have largely forgotten. Fact 12. Fox killed the show by scheduling it against Seinfeld.
Apartment because she came over to buy my television.
Television.
Yep.
Herman's Head ran for 3 seasons on Fox and managed to produce 72 episodes, which is a reasonable run for any sitcom, especially one on a relatively young network still figuring out its identity. But the show's cancellation was not simply a result of running out of story ideas or losing audience interest in a natural way. The scheduling decision that ended the show was about as brutal as it gets in network television. For its first 2 seasons, Herman's Head aired on Sunday nights at 9:30 on Fox. That was not an easy slot, but it was survivable. The real problem came when Fox moved the show to Thursday nights at 9:30 during its third and final season, starting in August of 1993. That move placed Herman's Head in direct competition with what was arguably the single most powerful Thursday night lineup in American television at the time. NBC's Thursday night schedule in the early 1990s was built around shows like Seinfeld, Frasier, and Homicide. Life on the Street. These were not just popular shows. They were some of the most critically praised and heavily watched programs on any network. Going up against that lineup was essentially a death sentence for a struggling sitcom on a secondary network. The ratings suffered, and Fox pulled the plug. Herman's Head ended in April of 1994 after that difficult final season in an impossible time slot. It is one of those situations where the quality of the show or the ideas it contained is almost beside the point. The show was simply scheduled into a corner it had no way out of, and that was that. Fact 13, the Silo creator wrote one episode early in his career.
That's not up to her. Stuff happens where she just has to step up, and she does.
Graham Yost is one of the more interesting success stories to emerge from anyone who worked on Herman's Head. He contributed one episode to the show during its first season, a script titled The Last Boy Scout, and then moved on. At that point, he was still in the early stages of what would turn out to be a very substantial career in American film and television. Not long after his time on Herman's Head, Yost wrote the screenplay for Speed, the 1994 action thriller starring Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. That film was a massive box office hit and launched Yost into a film career that also included the screenplays for Broken Arrow and Hard Rain. He eventually transitioned back toward television and became one of the more respected writer-producers working in the medium, with credits including the World War II miniseries Band of Brothers, for which he won a Golden Globe, and the acclaimed crime drama Justified, which ran on FX for 6 seasons. His most recent major work is Silo, the dystopian science fiction series on Apple TV+, based on the novel series by Hugh Howey. The show follows the residents of a massive underground silo living under a mysterious authoritarian regime, and it has been one of the more talked about prestige dramas of recent years. On the journey from a single episode of a forgotten Fox sitcom about a man's arguing inner emotions to the creator of a critically praised dystopian thriller is quite a distance to travel. But that is the full arc of Graham Yost's career. Herman's Head is, technically, somewhere near the very beginning of that story. Fact 14, the cast reunited to parody Herman Cain's presidential run.
Just having a problem with his bile duct.
In 2012, something unexpected happened more than 18 years after Herman's Head went off the air. 3 of the show's original cast members came back together to make a short video, not for a reunion special or a retrospective, but as a piece of political satire timed to the United States presidential election taking place that year. The video was made for the comedy website Funny or Die, and it was titled Herman Cain's Head. The cast members involved were Molly Hagan, who had played Angel on the show, Ken Hudson Campbell, who had played Animal, and Peter Mackenzie, who had played Genius. The joke was straightforward but effective. Herman Cain, the businessman and Republican presidential candidate who was making headlines at the time, shared a first name with the show's fictional protagonist. The video played on that coincidence by imagining the emotions inside Herman Cain's head in the style of the old sitcom. The fact that 3 of the original internal head characters reunited specifically to play versions of themselves inside a different Herman's brain is exactly the kind of absurdist comedy the original show would have appreciated. The video also demonstrated that the performers still had affection for the characters and the concept, even if the show itself had been off the air for nearly 2 decades. Herman Cain, who had briefly surged in polling during the Republican primary race, was a recognizable enough figure at the time to make the parody land for a broad audience. The video is a small moment in the show's legacy, but it is a genuinely fun one, and it showed that Herman's head had not entirely faded from memory even more than a decade and a half after its cancellation. Fact 15. A planned season 4 would have shown inside Hetty's head. 2.
Well, I was fairly psychotic. Ron, I like fluffy eggs.
When Herman's head was canceled by Fox after its 3rd season in 1994, it left at least one significant creative development unrealized. While the show was still on the air, now one of its writers was an active participant in an online forum dedicated to Fox programming, one of those early internet discussion spaces where fans gathered to talk about the network's shows. In that forum, the writer shared details about what the creative team had planned if the series had continued into a 4th season. The plan was to introduce a second set of internal characters, this time living inside the head of Hetty, Herman's ambitious and image-conscious co-worker, played by Jane Sibbett. Just as viewers had spent 3 seasons watching 4 personality figures argue inside Herman's mind, a new group of 4 characters would have been introduced to show the audience what was really going on inside Hetty's head. The idea had a clear dramatic logic behind it. Throughout the series, Hetty came across as calculating, a socially ruthless, and difficult to read. The writers felt there was a compelling story to tell about what actually drove her behavior, what her fears and desires looked like from the inside, and what made her tick in a way that the external scenes had never been able to fully explore. Her internal world running in parallel with Herman's would have added an entirely new dimension to the show. There was also a romantic dimension to the concept. Many viewers had long suspected that Herman and Hetty were destined to end up together, mirroring the relationship between Jay and Louise that had developed over the course of the series. Exploring Hetty's inner life would have made that potential connection feel more grounded. The cancellation meant it never happened.